Okay, now the third effect that is behind the inverse relationship between the price level and the quantity of real GDP, okay, is that the international trade effect. Okay, how that works? Of course, the international trade effect states that the inverse relationship between the price level and the quantity demanded of real GDP is established through, changing in foreign sector spending, and that basically consists of, domestic spending on foreign goods, which is called imports, and foreign spending on our goods or the domestic goods, that's called export. So here we're going to study the two cases, when the price level decreases in the domestic country and when the price level increases in the domestic country, and what are the effects of these two cases. So the first one, price level, which is the first one, is what? International trade effect due to a change in the price level. Okay, so first case, of course, price level decreases, of course, relative to the foreign price. So when the price level in the domestic country, relative to the foreign country. So that implies our domestic goods become relatively cheaper than the foreign goods. Which implies domestic as well as foreign buyers will purchase our goods. Domestic as well as foreign buyers will purchase our domestic goods, which implies, buy more goods and services. So price level decreases by more goods and services. We can graphically state this one as here. This is the price level, okay, and this is the quantity demand of real GDP. This is the aggregate demand. Okay, the price level was here, P0. The quantity demand was here, Q0. Now, when the price level goes down, what happens? The quantity demanded of real GDP increases. So, okay, and the quantity demanded increases from, of course, A to B, and this is what you get. We have a movement downward along the aggregate demand curve when the price level decreases in our country. What about the second case? When the price level increases in our country, in the domestic country, relative to the foreign country. What that means? It means our goods become more expensive. It means our domestic goods become more expensive relative to the foreign goods. Well, when our goods become more expensive, it means the domestic buyers as well as the foreign buyers will buy less of our goods and services. So that implies domestic as well as foreign buyers buy less of the domestic countries, of the domestic goods, which implies here buy less, goods and services. So graphically, we could state this one here: Q price. This is aggregate demand. Okay, this is the price, original price. This is how much goods and services to buy. Now, when the price level goes up, P1, it means you buy less goods and services. Okay, so now we have, of course, A to B. So we have the movement up along the aggregate demand curve when the price level, of course, increases. And this is actually the second case of the third effect of, that causes an inverse relationship between the price and the quantity demand of GDP, which is the international trade effect, of course, and these are the discussions of that, effect. Okay, now we have to, talk about the difference between a change in the quantity demanded and a change in the aggregate demand. So we have to differentiate between these two important terms. A change in the quantity demanded of real GDP is represented graphically as a movement from one point, let's say A, along the aggregate demand, AD, for instance, to another point, B, for instance, on the same aggregate demand. So a change in the quantity demand of real GDP is usually represented as a movement from one point along the aggregate demand curve to another point along the same aggregate demand curve. Now the question, what causes this movement? Of course, the change in the price level. So graphically, so a change in the quantity demand of GDP is represented graphically as a movement from one point say point A on A, B to another point say point B along the same aggregate demand. The price level is the only factor that causes a change in the quantity demand. QD, quantity demand. So, for instance, graphically, as you can see, we have the price level price level, PL, of course. And here we have quantity demanded of real GDP. Okay, and this is the aggregate demand. So, of course, when the price level decreases, the quant demand of real GDP increases, ceteris paribus. When the price level increases, the quant demand of real GDP decreases, ceteris paribus. So this is the price level over here, P0. The quant demanded is point A. This is the quant demanded, Q0. Now, when the price level decreases, the quant demanded of real GDP increases, ceteris paribus. Let's say the price level decreases to P1, which implies the quant demanded will increase to Q1, to a point B. So we have a movement along the aggregate demand curve. Same thing, when the price level is P1, okay, price level is P1 here, P price level, quantity demanded, and this is what you get here, AD. So when the price level is here, P0, the quant demanded is Q0, point A. And when the price level increases to P1, then the quant demanded will decrease to Q1, point B, along the same. So P0 increases to P1, Q0 decreases to D1, as you can see. Here, P0 decreases to P1, Q0 increases to Q1 along. This is so a change in the quant demanded, as I said, is represented graphically as a movement along the aggregate demand curve. And the price level is the only factor that causes this movement. Okay, so when the price level changes, the quant demanded will change, ceteris paribus. Now, what about a change in aggregate demand? A change in aggregate demand, AD, of course, is represented graphically as a shift in the aggregate demand curve, is represented graphically as a shift in the aggregate demand curve. A shift, it means an increase or a decrease in the aggregate demand curve. So an increase in the aggregate demand curve means the aggregate demand would shift to the right. A decrease in the aggregate demand curve means it would shift to the left. So, of course, here as you can see, when the aggregate demand, it changes, the quantity demanded, it changes, even though the price level did not change. So here, when the aggregate demand changes, that is, it shifts to the right or to the left, then the quantity demanded changes, even though the price level remains fixed. The price level did not change. However, the quant demanded changes, okay, even though the price level did not change. In the first case, when the price level changes, the quant demanded changes. The price level decreases, the quantity demand increases, ceteris paribus. Over here, even though the price level is constant, when the, of course, aggregate demand shifts, the quantity demand will shift. If the aggregate demand increases, the quantity demanded will increase. Okay, graphically we can, of course, show this. For example, this is quantity demanded of real GDP, and this is the price level, PM, price level, and this is the aggregate demand 1, okay? For example, at the price level of 130, okay, the economic demand of GDP is, let's say, $100 billion. Okay? When the price level is 130, the economic demand of GDP, that is, the consumers, the businesses, the government, will demand the value, $100 billion worth of goods and services in the domestic economy. Now, at the same price level, okay, when the aggregate demand shifts, okay, when the aggregate demand shifts, to 82, from A to B, as you can see, the price level remains the same, 130. However, as you can see, the aggregate demand shifts from 81 to 82. So what happens to the quantity demanded? Increases to $120 billion. So, as you can see, the quantity demanded changes, okay, even though the price level did not change. So, when the aggregate demand changes, that is, increases or decreases, the quantity demanded will change, that is, increase or decrease. When the aggregate demand increases, that is, it shifts to the right, even though the price level is still the same, the quantity demand will increase. In the case, the case that we have already discussed, when a change in the quantity demand of GDP, we said that when the price level changes, the quantity demand will change. Here, the price level kept the same. However, when the aggregate demand shifts, the quantity demand, of course, it changes. The quantity demanded, it changes from 100 billion to 120 billion. So this is the difference between these two concepts must be understood. Of course, we should differentiate between them. When we say a change in the quantity demanded, of course, we mean a movement along the aggregate demand curve. And when we say a change in aggregate demand, we mean that the aggregate demand shifts. Okay, that is the aggregate demand either increase or decrease.